So what happens when two third-generation Arizona women authors who are passionate about their state start talking about experiences, insights, and memories of different places? They don't stop talking. They write a book, and then they start a podcast. Welcome to Celebrating Arizona with Julie Morrison and Lisa Schnebley-Heidinger. Grab your favorite drink and settle in. We're celebrating Arizona, going everywhere from A to Z. And we're off.
Welcome to an exciting and satisfactory episode. We have a wonderful guest today. Paul Maynard is here. Paul?
Well, good afternoon or good morning or good day, wherever you happen to be, Lisa.
And you have a ton of Arizona and a bigger ton of Southern Arizona. And we cross paths kind of in Southern Arizona.
Well, we did. Actually, there's a long story with the Schnebley name and me.
Tell me.
All right. So you and I were classmates. You were a few years behind me at Catalina High School. But then we reconnected and worked on the yearbook staff at the University of Arizona on the Desert Yearbook. That's where we reconnected. And then just over the years, probably because of social media, we've reconnected. And but I got to tell you, the first time I ever heard the Schnebley name, my dad had a drugstore in Wilcox, Arizona, of all places, in about 1957, 58.
Oh my God.
And the only TV station we could get was Channel 9 because the translator was on Mount, is that Bigelow?
Yes,
and
Bigelow.
That was the only one that went over the mountain so that those of us in Wilcox could watch TV. We had one channel. And one of the first voices we heard and faces we saw was a guy named Larry Schnebley.
Isn't that great? Yeah, 57, because he started there in 60 and did a late night show. I wonder if you guys watched the late night show.
I think we may have. Did he have a movie at one time?
Jack Jacobson had a movie.
Yeah,
that was Jack. But when Larry started, and I won't go on and on about this, three guys worked every night. And they actually worked because there was a little bit of news to read at the end of the broadcast day. So they would rotate. One would read the news, one would read the commercials, and one would operate the camera. Next night they switched. And then they thought, well, heck, we're here and we've got the whole studio to ourselves. Let's start a late night show. And they did. And Larry and Jeff were the late night guys, and they would have guests on. And when the Zoom camera came into being, they put Larry on a ladder. Oh, there's Sally. We have to take a little break so Sally and Mayor can say hello to each other. And I don't know if Tom can get another shot. But boy, would that be wonderful.
She was just asking.
Oh, hi, sweet girl. So good to see you. Yay, Sally. So let's see, I'll back up a little bit.
Well, we're talking about Larry, and the thing is that all those things are all intertwined. I mean, and your family are a big part of what is Southern Arizona.
Well, that's very kind of you.
And I would have to say that my parents are probably contemporaries of your parents.
I bet so.
And so they came about the same age, and they came here from the Midwest in 1951. So while I'm the only one of my family's generation born here, unlike yours, all my nieces and nephews are all first generation, second generation Arizonans. And so I don't have the depth that you have, but a lot of connections there.
Well, and remember, I hope, and if I haven't said to you before, I'm saying it to you now, that Arizonans are not the ones who are born here. Arizonans are the ones who come and think it resonates in them in a way that it doesn't in other people. And you are definitely an Arizonan.
Thank you.
Definitely an Arizonan. And not just because you were here by accident, but because you came back. And that is a huge Arizona. And you've been embracing Tucson and contributing to the rest of ours ever since.
Well, and so right there might be a way to interject. I remember when I was going through this process after having decided to come back to Tucson after 47 years, one of the first things you said to me was, "You're not coming back. You're relocating." You said your toolbox is different, and you have no idea what that did up here in the brain.
Oh, I hope something good.
It was good. It was good. But the other thing that you did was you used the words, when I came back, you said, I'm so glad that you have embraced Tucson like you have. And that's why my blogs feature those words, embracing Tucson and embracing Arizona.
How lovely.
Because what you're talking about is really true. True Arizonans, or people who embrace this place, really are the ones that want to have something to do with it.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, I've learned more about this town since I've come back than I ever did in the 20-some years before I left.
Because you came back on purpose to become part of the community, not because you're just here. Yeah.
Yes.
So talk some about that. What are some of the ways you interact with the city?
Well, I'm very fortunate. I've interacted with people that, that's the connection. I have people from way back that I've connected with. I've had friends who've come here from other places, and then I have new friends. And one of the things that's been interesting is I connected with a group, and I'm going to give them credit, Beyond.org, Tucson, which was founded out of the Gabby Giffords tragedy. And have a group called Meet Me Mondays. And I've learned a lot from those people about what this town is. We go on walks twice a week. We see different parts of this city. And that's where a lot of the things you've seen with the murals that I've talked about have come from. And so it's that interaction. It's with my old friends from my other life, my previous life, and then friends who've come to see me from other places because they're curious about this place we call home. And not only that, one other thing that has happened is my oldest son, who grew up in Minnesota until a few years ago, lived there. He relocated to the Phoenix area within the last 3 or 4 years. And you want to talk about somebody who's embraced Arizona. He's really taken on to it. So
now I can't imagine somebody doing it more than you. What does that mean?
Well, actually, we just had it. In fact, while I was waiting here to sign on with you, we were trading stories about the barrio area down around the annex and that area down there. He found some story. Dwell magazine just did a story, and he's a big person. Dan has a lot of interests, so we like to make sure he's always interested in what's going on. I think that's really, when you find people who want to embrace this place, I think you and I had this conversation not long ago, is that people here, this is not a melting pot, it's a mulligan stew, which I don't know where that came from. That must have been Tom Trimble, I guess, but that's somebody who came up with that.
And for people who don't really speak the cooking language, explain the difference between a melting pot and a mulligan stew.
Well, a melting pot would just be a collection of things. A mulligan stew, you still have different flavors that still enhance things, whereas a melting pot coalesces everything and just makes it kind of homogeneous. Whereas a mulligan stew is, you still get that distinct flavor. And I've hung around chefs and cooks for a while, so I kind of know, if I want to use some tarragon, I'll be able to tell that tarragon's in there. Well, that's where some of these Midwestern personalities and some of these other things that have come here burgle in and help make this the collection that it is. And that's what sets us apart. I lived in Texas for 20 years before I came here, and I've lived in other Western states. There's very few places, if any at all, like Arizona. And you prove that every week.
That. Well, and now so do you. That's true. So when you were away, you were doing some of the things you're doing now. You were being in places and sharing places. That's okay. Sally can do whatever she wants.
I actually come from a marketing background. Well, I spent my business career as a marketing person, primarily in trade shows, and I spent the last 15 years as an independent marketing consultant, primarily a writer. And so that's what I've done. But what that does, as you know, having come from the news industry, it makes you go look for stories. Well, now that I'm having to learn how to be retired in this third act of life, I'm learning how to tell stories. And so that's why you see what you see from me. is trying to tell the stories that I run across every day. I have friends who've lived here their whole lives, and I'll come up with a story that I'll put on the blog or in the essays or in the newsletter, and it'll be, and they'll say, I didn't know where that was. I've lived here my whole life. We'll talk about a barrio, or talk about blogs, or we'll talk about a restaurant.
Okay, so since we're chatting on air, tell us where people can find those things.
Oh, okay. Well, now I'm plugging myself. Sorry.
That's no. You're sharing, embracing Tucson and Arizona.
Well, primarily, I turned my business blog, which is at paulemaynard.com. Don't forget the E. That's where my blog is, and that's where the Embracing Arizona and the Embracing Tucson blogs are. And I try to keep up with that about once a week or every other week. I write primarily almost every day on Substack, and I don't know if anybody knows Substack, but it's an essay type social media platform. But I write under the Living the Third Act is my handle, or you can find my name. And I write about what it's like to be in this stage of life. And I write things that have to do with recollecting things. And then the third one is really a weekly newsletter. I gave up on social media platforms that shall remain nameless and decided to do a newsletter. And my son jokingly says, "Gee, Dad, you thought you had 1,100 friends. Those 80 or 90 people you write to every week is probably who you were talking to anyway."
Aw.
But it gives us a chance to tell some stories. And you're a regular reader, and I appreciate your content.
Well, I appreciate what I got to read, and I got to say something back every time. There's always things to say back, and that is called.
Well, the newsletter is just it's the Relentless newsletter, because my nickname used to be the Relentless Networker, and I've since shortened that, and that's a whole nother story from my Dallas days.
Okay. And I call you Sojourner.
Yes, right. You call me Sojourner. And then a good friend of mine, and I'll shout out to my friend Sherman, who's taught me a lot about the murals and the art in this city. He refers to Sally as Mural Dog. And so that's why I occasionally,
precious.
I will sign to you back, Sojourner and Mural Dog.
And I love that. Okay, we're going to take a quick little break, and then we're going to come back and talk about the stuff that you talk about.
Thank you.
An exquisite AZ-250 passport place is Hannigan Meadow, a rare treasure where you go just to be. Beautiful surroundings to relax and savor stillness in. At 9,000 feet south of Greer, you are deliciously far off the beaten path. You can fish, hike, dine. In fact, the night we went, our server pulled up a chair to take our order. In a gorgeous rustic lodge, you can stay in a room named for an Arizona pioneer. Priceless. So we're back, and you have 1,000 things you could talk about, but we're starting smaller than 1,000. So we want to talk about murals, and I want to hear again your women thing.
We'll talk about that essay, because where both of these come from is for a lot of different reasons. I'm a recovering bicyclist, and I say recovering because I've gone from riding 3,000 or 4,000 miles a year to riding less than 1,000 because I've had an injury or two, and the dog and I have spent a lot of time walking. We walk about 600 miles a year, and so we end up walking and going, and that's where the art comes in, because in the time we've been here, we found over 700 pieces of art in this town.
Holy smoke, I didn't realize it was that many.
It's just phenomenal. You can't turn a corner without finding a mural, a piece of metal art, a sculpture. And so that's where that comes from. The other thing is what you're talking about is the place names and street names, and we'll get to that because you know some of that. But you want to start with murals?
Yes, I want to start with murals.
Well, it's interesting. Where I started with murals is you can isolate it. There's downtown, and there's actually a shopping mall on the east side, Park Place, that actually has mural art in it. It has about 30 pieces of art in it. And there's other places up at St. Philip's up north, and go down South 12th. But let's focus on downtown. And I'm going to give some. Go ahead.
No.
I'm gonna give some credit to some people. I can sit here and talk about being Mr. Mural Hunter, but I got to tell you, first of all, the Arizona Daily Star has helped me tremendously in figuring out things. Their archivist has been great, and actually for the essay I wrote too. And then Jerry Peak, B.G. Boyd, and Randy Garcia have created websites and other sources. And then there are people who run professional tours for murals. So I am by far not the expert on murals. I'm a visitor, and I'm taking it in. And I've learned from some people as well. My friends Sherman and Denise from the Meet Me Mondays group have taught me a lot. But where we start, let's just start. In fact, I did this over the holiday weekend with my son and his family. We walked about 2.5 miles and saw 25 to 30 pieces of art just by doing a circle from where Corbett's is at 6th and 7th.
Oh, okay.
And for those of you who know the history of Tucson, the Corbett name goes way back in this town. But Corbett's used to be a lumber yard when I was in high school, and now it's a bar and pickleball place. And it's a great outdoor place, so we'll plug them. But we start there, and you go under the underpass, and you make a turn, and you the first thing you do when you come underneath is you pass through, and you see one of the largest murals in the state that commemorates the 100th anniversary of the rodeo. And what's interesting about it is you start to walk, I can pick out these individual murals, and I'll talk about that one because there are primarily 4 or 5 mural artists in town, and we call him by the first name of just Ignacio. His name's Ignacio Garcia. And very great guy, does a lot of great work. In fact, all of these people are very approachable. If you catch them in the act of painting, they'll probably stop and talk to you. In fact, one of the other artists knows Sally, doesn't know my name, but knows her, and will start a conversation with me because he recognizes her. But within the few blocks of just going down 6th and turning onto Alameda and into downtown and going up Stone, you find yourself immersed in murals on walls, tile on benches. When you get to St. Augustine Cathedral, there's 2 things. There's a mural down the side of a parking garage, and across the street in St. Augustine Cathedral is a commemorative sculpture for the 7 Sisters of Carondelet, where the Carondelet name comes. And so it just all kind of interconnects. Here's this metal sculpture that explains who they are, and then then you turn around, and Joe Pagic, and we call him Pagic because his name rhymes with magic. He's one of the other muralists, and he painted his Tucson 250 mural. There were a series of murals that were commemorated, or I'm not using the right word.
Commissioned?
Yes, commissioned to commemorate the 250th anniversary of Tucson earlier this year. And so Joe and Ignacio, the Desert Pen, and a young woman named Camilla have all created them, and you can walk and see all of those within the space of a mile downtown, primarily around 6th and Congress, if you really want to do it.
That is doggone impressive that you have mined this work. I mean, I think most of us just go past it. Well, and I remember a long time ago when they put, and now I'm going blank, but downtown Pancho Villa and the little triangle of grass downtown.
Yes. In fact, we went and saw that with the Monday group just recently, and one of the things that's interesting about seeing Pancho Villa, apparently it was kind of a controversy that Pancho Villa was given to us because of the timing. It was in the 80s sometime, and the president of Mexico gave it to the city of Tucson, and there was much clamoring and confusion over what to do about accepting this gift. But there he is. He's right there on that triangle right there where Congress and Broadway and Church are, right there.
Yeah.
Now,
I guess not everybody thought of him as part of the solution. Some people thought of him as part of the problem.
Well, there's a whole mixed history of Pancho Villa and whose side he's on and what he did and all that. We can't get into that, but as a piece of art, he's quite exquisite.
He is. And I think a great many Arizonans, and I've probably said this to you before, Arizona was largely settled by people who did not play well with others where they came from. So the great part is we are not, just living in desolation and acceptance. We came here because we wanted to live differently. And I feel like I can say that because my great-grandparents were part of that. And it doesn't mean that we're not nice, it just means we're individual. And I think when you get a whole lot of individuals, not all of them are going to merge and meld. Some are going to see things very differently. So Joe Bonanno, who was Mafia, was also really nice to, well, you knew William Ferguson on the yearbook staff. And he would load groceries at El Rancho, and he was always loading Joe Bonanno's groceries. And Bonanno obviously had some problems in the world, but he was also a really nice guy, a daily mass goer. You know, a lot of Arizonans are not multi-faced in a deceptive way, but we just have our weaknesses and our strengths.
You know, in some respects, they're a variation of Texans, except there's a little difference. They still hang on to a piece of who they were and where they came from. Hence the Mulligan stew analogy.
Okay.
And then let's go back to Joe Bonanno. Didn't Joe Bonanno give a house? He had a house that was near what is now Banner Health on North Campbell. And I remember this happened in sometime in the 70s, and he donated this house to the hospital. Well, then the news crews came to talk about this, and they found secret gun ports and hidden rooms and things.
How did I never hear that? I was in
this
news
is just
in
a
Tucson.
recollection.
But this was the 70s? I guess I wasn't in news yet.
It was
so
the
I missed
70s.
that.
I think it was.
That's marvelous.
It's a recollection, so I need to Snopes it here. You know, we need to get some credibility to it. But I have this recollection. So here's a man who came from that world, but yet he was willing to be gracious enough to donate. So hence
which is
this
beautiful
mix that you're talking about.
Nothing and nobody is all good or all bad, huh?
That's right.
There's a rich stew in a lot of us. And when I remember one time in Tucson, I had some eating issues, and I was up late at night because I didn't eat all day. And the only things I had in the kitchen at the moment were a can of garbanzo beans and some Cool Whip. And so I'm all by myself, just scarfing this stuff down. At the time, I was working in TV news, and I thought, if anybody saw this, that would just be the worst thing in the world. But I think all of us have some dualities.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we all have the end of the spectrum we'd like people to know about, and maybe the end we'd just soon not a whole lot of people do, and that's okay.
Well, and that's all right. I mean, that's what makes us who we are. I mean, as we talk about, let's go back to that third act. We're in the third act of life. I originally called it the fourth quarter, but a friend of mine said, that sounds a little too final. Why don't you call it something? And the third act of a play is the conclusion of a story. And so what you find when you get to this third act is that you look back and you go, I'm the sum of who I am, and not all of it adds up, but this part does, and that's who I am. To go back to your toolbox analogy, I have tools in there I use. There's others that have changed. There's some that are gone, and there's some that I continue to use.
Yeah, and all of them have accrued over time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, let's take a break because we want to come back, and I want you to read and talk more.
Okay.
AZ-250 commemorative sites are for reflection. One is the Arizona Commemorative Air Force Museum at Falcon Field in Mesa. It includes military aircraft from 100 years of aviation. These are gathered to honor all the valiant service people whose courage, sacrifice, and determination protected us in World War II and since. Docents give their time and often their own stories to visitors. This place reaches back to remember our heroes and forward to teach children about bravery. Okay, we're back, and before we have Paul read or talk much, I had totally forgotten that you were one of the first contributors when Celebrating Arizona was birthed. And I wanted local businesses to get shout outs from people who used them. So tell the other people, because I remember what you talked about.
Well, I talked about, because like I said, I'm a recovering cyclist. So I discovered a place by bike shops, coffee shops, and breweries. But I found a place that actually had two of them together, a coffee shop and a bike shop. And it's a place called Hello Bikes. It's got a mural on the side of it too, so it's got everything, as far as
Boy, it is your home, isn't it?
And in fact, they call Sally by name when she comes in there. But it's a coffee shop on one side with a bike shop on the other. The owner is a native Arizonan who went away like I did, but came back with this concept. And it really works well. You can drop off your bike, you can go have a latte or whatever, and a pastry. They even have vegan pastries. It's really kind of an interesting place. But they're up here in this Fort Dodge neighborhood, Dodge and Fort Lowell, kind of in that way.
Okay.
Up there behind OK Feeds.
Not far from my starting grounds. So, Paul, among all your many wonderful qualities and successes, you are the very first person in the history of 50 or so podcasts to be the contributor of the mug of the show. And if you look at the website, every single episode has a mug, coffee mug, because I think in 1983 or 4, I bought a Support the Copper Miners mug from one of the strikes. And that kind of was, hey, I'm going to get more mugs. So we have so many that now they are what goes on the logo of the show. And you brought a guest mug. And that's so cool.
Thank you.
That's what's on today's episode.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coffee shops are an interesting way to get to know a town because they're usually local. We're not going to talk about the big corporate one, although they're friendly people. It's just something about going to a local coffee shop that helps you learn about the place.
I think that, and a lot of people, us, whoever, are regulars. My daughter met her partner when he worked at the coffee shop she used to work at, and because we do tend to return. It's part of our life. It's part of our beat.
And here it becomes part of your neighborhood. I mean, they're just a few blocks from me, so that's part of the reason I discovered them.
Which is perfect.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to have that distinction.
I love that you have that distinction. So you're going to read to us.
I'm going to do my best to read to you something that I wrote that you read and liked. It's on the blog. I wrote it back in January, and it's under the Embracing Tucson title. It's called Street Names and Strong Women. And so I'll just read this verbatim. I might interject some things, but let's just start.
Perfect.
It started with a purpose of finding the origins of street names. What I discovered was more than names, but some powerful stories, including stories of strong women. I found a story on the Arizona Daily Star site after searching Tucson street names. I started with the ones nearby: Swan, Craycroft, Campbell. Those of you who know Tucson, those are the verticals. Alexander A.R. Swan was a farmer and businessman who lost his orchards over water rights. The road is named for he and his wife Nellie. Robert Craycroft was an engineer who built his dream home on a dirt road that now bears his name. Judge Campbell was a Supreme Court justice and on the Board of Regents. Then it gets interesting. Larsina Pennington, the daughter of a lumberman and Tucson businessman, survived an Indian attack and starvation in 1860.
Holy smoke.
Apaches ambushed their camp near the border, so they were traveling south of here, and left her for dead. She survived for 14 days, only to have her husband, John Page, ambushed and killed the next year.
Oh my God.
Now keep in mind the name Pennington. Well, we'll come back to this. She was later remarried to another prominent Tucsonan, William Scott. Scott Street.
Oh.
Ina Giddings was a pioneer in women's physical education at the U of A. She apparently pronounced her name Ina. It's spelled I-N-A, for those of you who know Tucson. So maybe we should rethink how we say the name of the road. Instead of Ina Road, maybe it should be Ina Road. Kind of like Houghton Road. Is it Houghton, Houghton, or Houghton?
Oh my gosh. Never thought about
Well,
Houghton.
I have a
right.
nephew who gives me a hard time about how I pronounce Houghton, but to me it's Houghton, Michigan, but here it's Houghton.
Okay, yeah.
Going on, Pearl Anklem was a civic leader from Michigan. The road was built by and named by and for her family. Helen Wetmore envisioned a huge shopping mall, Tucson Mall, decades before its time. Harriet Kolb wanted to ensure that her husband Richard's place in Tucson history. Catherine and her husband John McGee were authors.
My gosh.
McGee Road is named for both of them. And speaking of books, Limberlost Drive is named for a children's book by a woman, Jean Stratton Porter, not from Arizona. So there wouldn't be two Wetmore roads. A U of A professor and author of children's book, Harry Benn, petitioned the city to rename the road. He lived on it in 1941. Wow. Street names are deeper and richer than you might know.
Definitely. Wonderful.
You can't turn around without finding something. This is just a collection of stuff here.
A collection of stuff. that starts with elevating it, and then it brings it back down to earth.
There you go. But that was part of our name, and those names, they're just names on streets, and then you start to realize, Mr. Swan lost his orchards because he lost a water battle to the Corbetts.
Wow.
That's now suddenly elevates who that is.
And also speaks to, okay, so is somebody good or bad? Well, they're both. I mean, if they took his water rights, well, that's bad. Yeah, but they did a lot for Tucson. That's good. You can't really, and maybe it's wonderful that you shouldn't put people in categories of good or bad. People are people, and we do all kinds of things.
Yeah, unfortunately, the world is not black or white. There's shades of gray there. So,
but thank God for that.
Yes. Yeah,
shades of gray and other colors, even while we're talking about mulligan stew.
Little tarragon here and there. Yeah.
So I grew up on Arcadia, and at Glen, if you cross Ontario, and so you have to look to the right if you're going to find Arcadia, because that's the only place it is if you're on Glen. And my dad worked at Kagun, which was on 6th, but it was Fontana, I believe, on the other side of Grant. So I thought streets all had dual personalities when I was little, and I didn't really pay much attention. But Arizona, Tucson has, it does. It's rich in street names, and I love that you find them and notice them and point them out. And you and I remember when Fort Lowell was just Fort Lowell, but now there's Camp Lowell as part of Fort Lowell, and it continues to evolve.
It continues to evolve, and that one is, you and I remember the curve in Fort Lowell. Well, there's a cemetery where that curve is.
Yes. And as a matter of fact, when I was in high school, I had written a kind of a ballad about the sheriff and the school teacher and blah, blah, blah. And we shot a very, very rudimentary movie and used that cemetery. Because back then, and Trail Dust Town, which, believe it or not, Paul, well, you do because you were here,
yep.
It was in the desert.
Oh, yeah, it really was.
We could shoot in Trail Dust Town, and it could look like it was all by itself. And now it is so surrounded, and again, things change, but it's interesting to have lived long enough to see things change this much.
Well, and as I've said to you many times, this is not the town I left in 1977. But it's not that it's different, it's evolved, and it's not negatively. I think that, in fact, when I was driving with my son through town the other day, he goes, this has an Austin, Texas vibe from 1970, 1980. Not that he was around, but that's what we talked about. And this is not downtown Phoenix.
No. Tucson has a wonderful Sonoran, well, the old Pueblo, yep. Doesn't it? People come and they stay because they love what they find. And I think that's what keeps it so strong.
Well, I have friends that I worked with in other states for other companies that this is not home. They're from Iowa and other states, and they made this their retirement home. They've chosen to come here. This is an interesting place to come. And before I forget, though, let's not be too hard on downtown Dallas, because there's some great murals, including Teddy Roosevelt down on Roosevelt Road. But that's a whole nother story. Maybe we'll do that another time.
Murals matter. Murals matter.
Murals matter. Thank you.
Thank you for today.
Well, thank you.
And there will be others.
Oh, thank you. I hope so. This has been a real pleasure and a real honor for you to ask me to do this, because it's so much fun to have conversations with you, because we're not sure where they're going to go, but they always come back to this. And I think that our Arizona roots and our Tucson connections have really been interesting. And I think I have to tell you, I will tell you straight up, you have helped me in this third act of life. I'm having to learn how to cope with this change of life, this quote unquote retirement, and figure out what to do with that. But you've been you and your friends and family have been a big help for that. So thank you, Lisa.
So sweet. You are so very welcome. And Larry, my dad always said, retirement's the best job I've ever had, and I'm going to keep it as long as I can.
Yeah.
And I think you retired not in a, now I'm going to go sit there way. You've retired and I'm going to be just as busy, but now I get to be busy doing the things I want to do all the time. And that is perfect.
And as you know from being a storyteller, one of the things I enjoy is being able to tell stories. But what I really get a kick out is when someone reads something I've written and comments to me, and we have a dialogue over that. That thrills me no end, because it just says, okay, hey, maybe I made a difference somewhere.
Absolutely. And you do, sir.
Thank you. Thank you,
Lisa. Till next time.
Till next time.
We'd really like to hear from you about anything this show led you to think about. Write to us at celebratingaz.com. The wizard behind making a conversation into a podcast is Tom Heidinger. The music comes from Daniel Blatney. And I'm Dana Cooper.